I feel like I should just know. I've said this so many times. Okay. What I'm going to do is a heavily breakdown of my day. Also, I look guapo. I took a shower. That's nice. I have not eaten. I'm slowly eating the Panera stuff. Currently, I'm doing my media and ethics course, which is great. So I'm doing that. Then I am going to look at this. So already, this is my to-do. As you can tell, this is all I have done. I did not do fully a lot of this. I need to implement this today. The plugin. I need to just say, the plugin is in there. The plugin is great. The plugin is good. Experiment. Do not be afraid, brain. My brain be like on overdrive. I wrote out this is new, and for Monday, currently it is 9:22, 9:23, 9:24, 9:25, 9:26, 9:27, 9:28. For which one is it? Not VFX. The one class that is not on here, I realize, is not game projects. I'm just like, let's go to my board. Oh, Art 450. Yeah, you obviously saw what it was. I have my camera down. Okay. So, Art 450. Turn in documents. Practice. That's really it. And this is, I'm guessing it's due Thursday. It's Thursday, so it's 9:25 at, or maybe it's due Friday. It's that weird thing. I'll just say it's due at the 25th. 11:59 p.m. It's that type of vibe. Also, it was due at 12 a.m. on Friday, so it's like, oh, okay. Anyhow, my goal, I've done this. That's great. I'm going to do this, and probably this a little bit today. And then, I think I will do this on Thursday. But I will need to do this. I've done that for my Discord people. Then, I need to do this today. So I'm gonna say CG392. I also want to edit edit videos. I have not done that. I am gotta be transparent about that. Then lighting in Unreal, which is due on the 24th. So we gotta do our lighting stuff. Maybe we have to fix some assignments. I have not checked my email if they've graded it. You know, we have to have that churn in my stomach a little bit. So let's check that out. Okay, it appears, I have it up, I'm not going to show you it obviously, but it seems like they have not, which I have to understand that, right? Okay, like, think about the anxiety right now. Imagine if I have, the one thing that they don't really tell you when it comes to school is resubmits. I feel like in high school, I forgot if there is things called resubmits. There probably is. I'm gonna be honest about that. But just the freedom of a resubmit, right? I feel like when you get an assignment or a test, you can't just do a resubmit unless you have a lower grade on it, right? Obviously, that's like the mandatory thing. But for a college class, it almost feels like a resubmit is like an option if you want a better grade, right? And it's not so mandatory on the person to do it, but sometimes you have teachers, I'm just saying overall branch of teachers, not just for DigiPen, but just like, I feel like maybe just in the standards of maybe yes, DigiPen, is the aspect that you have to wait during a certain period when they have their grading period. So you have to account for if you do bad on an assignment. I did this really good in freshman year, like especially with like traditional paintings or whatnot. Like you have to block out your time to understand when they finish grading and to get their work to check in or you tell them up front, hey, can you check on my work? I won't be available to do any resubmits on this day. And so it's almost like a partnership. So being that this is the 4th week, technically it would be like the 3rd week of officially school, but it's still, no, actually, no, I'm lying. It's the 4th week. I'm looking at my calendar over there. It's the 4th week. And the 2nd week and the 3rd week, well, 1st week was like getting to know the classes format. There was a census. 2nd, there was a 2nd census. 3rd week is like, okay, here's some introduction of starting your own thing. 4th week is when they actually lock in on grades, whether or not you did something good or bad, because that's when you're like, okay, I gotta lock in. So I gotta note that. There's also like what is that? Focus. Enhance. Maybe it's just too gross. It was a nail. Anyhow, I need to do my procedural assignment, do the plugin. Then I gotta do my lighting. Then I have to do my VFX. I gotta message Russell, just a reminder if the thing is actually due tomorrow with the vet stuff, and then yeah, to move that. I think that's it. Go get them, girly. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna read these documents. I kind of find it fascinating. Okay, here's my initial take on AI. I know. I worked on this small game called Barton, and for my role, or my personal role that I wanted to dive into, is the aspects of the history of how the types of quote-unquote AI has been used to communicate with humans. For example, when I say quote-unquote AI, let's say text-based storytelling, whether if it is the Oregon Trail with their text and dialogue, or typing games that you have to learn to spell out words in order to progress through a game. Those are the types of like chatbot experiences that for our game, like Barton, you would have to talk to this ChatGPT API, which was not my idea. It was a person named Karen's idea to envelop yourself in a story where you are using this robot as the medium made by artists, not using generative AI to create anything, besides having someone who likes to concept stuff in generative AI, but pushed aside just as iteration, but fully going in depth with using art itself. I don't think we use generative AI in any other capacity. Yeah. But overall, my take on it is that I'm on the side of I find it to be fascinating just to understand the pros and cons of it. I would like to know whether or not what are the good parts and what are the bad parts, and not to be pigeonholing myself to say very much a negative thing. It's like a very negative thing in the world, because I feel like I would upfrontly say it's a tool, but it doesn't replace people. It replaces, if anything, just the efficiency of getting something out there, but that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. It's like any type of software, like on the market, like Photoshop, like it's industry standard, or Maya, it's industry standard. It's like Houdini, it's industry standard to like generate things. But yet sometimes it kind of sucks. The software kind of sucks and it's terrible. So I think it's one of those things I would imagine in the future that if AI were to be a thing, it would still need to be regulated in a way where as in a tool, it would need help from us to have maintenance for it, right? Imagine just like search engines, right? They have like those things at the bottom of the ocean, and it's like whatever. But this is again at the face value in my brain. I've not even read the document about it, so that's just like my baseline. What I also find fascinating about AI as of now is like the aspect of just conversing about it. That's why I decided to like just start character AI, which is just using filth and seeing fandoms. And it's a weird margin to be like, yeah, before it was like I'm notably the guy who did for based off the most chats like the Wukong woman, and then second to none now it's like Marvel Rivals characters. But the one thing I would say that is very strong about character AI is the mannerisms that you can put into each character. Besides, oh my gosh, it takes so much memory to like take something. That is bad. I understand that. But just the general aspect of that, there's a type of tone that you can create with characters. It's fascinating. Let's say, like for example, Emma Frost, right? Because that's my most popular one. You can put either there's a definition thing, either just a chunk of personality traits into it and see how that goes. You can also put just a whole documentation of like all her history of who she is as an individual, and just from that, it seems like the information from the internet gathers that information and puts it into that character. And that's an example of someone who's like popular in media already and has existed for quite some time. Let's say, for example, that you create like a full-fledged new character, whether if it is yeah, let's just say for let's just say for example, the real girlfriend one that I put up, because there's so much smuck on there. I'm like, man, maybe let me tackle something actually real, quote unquote real. Let me just like an authentic person, but not authentic person, but like more or less so they're normal. Like they have a conversation. There's like no smuck in the thing. So how do you do that when it seems like that the resource that you have use, or like the bank of information that it gets, is just a lot of smuck? Like how do you erase that? Well, you just redefine all its parameters in a way that trying to avoid these topics, and then see how they converse with you by just testing like, hey, what's your name? What do you do? What do you like? What do you don't like? And that's what I do. We're testing like each one, and how also how their mannerisms are like, and how they express themselves, whether or not if it's like, oh, they lean against a wall begrudgingly and scoff. What are you going to do about it? You know, it's like type of things, like that type of manner. It's like, okay, do you like the mannerism or not? Then you change it. Otherwise, that's some part of character that I really enjoy. And also just crafting worlds, right? I think, no tangent, but just crafting worlds in general, it's like, how can you upscale that just from a character into a whole world for someone to like just imagine, is also quite cool. And also, personally, being upfront, how to push the boundaries of what is restricted or not on the platform itself. Because sometimes it's like, oh, okay, this picture. See, sometimes I only use those types of pictures just to see if it's like okay, and I'm like, I'm baffled. Sometimes a challenge to me where I'm like, okay, can I adjust it this way? And I'm like, oh, okay. But it's fun. It's like a fun like just side project. But I don't necessarily see it as a full-fledged job. Even with that, I gotta admit that I think it's more so just something that it's for those people who enjoy a fandom and want to talk to their favorite character or immerse themselves in a world, or just at face value that, besides knowing like it takes a lot of memory, it depends on the type of prompting, like GPT to have different mannerisms behind that, which could be costly. It could be also harsh in a way where they're trying to restrain and push away people who are trying to like explicitly try to put like bad content, or pushing out there to the public bad content. Also, a lot of the aspects of trying to the impact on the youth if they use that type of product earlier on in life. So it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm immersed in it. How do I not overall fix it, but overall navigate it, and then try to use it responsibly in that regard, and acknowledging that like there's like other people in the world who might be using it, and they're the first person to like see my account, and that's like, whoa. I see that in like in the following, which they also don't do the sticker things anymore. So I'm like, I don't even use the stickers. I don't know. There's a, I would say like they're like at face front, like I don't want to say at top of the industry, but they're like, they are doing things that I wouldn't have considered using AI in a way to have conversations, to have like media, and like knowing like, oh, VEO is like pushing out stuff when before it was like it was behind the paywall. Like that's interesting. Just no ignorance. That's all I expect myself. You're like, what? Where is this going? Anyhow, I'm gonna do my assignment because that is actually along the lines of, okay, I'm thinking this way. Let's see if the articles can change my brain or like make me be better as a person. And yes, it's always great to be a better person each day, and it shows. I got a few A's in the days, so please do not dwindle on me, and I gotta edit my videos after this, and then I'm going to do the export. Yes! I'm not crazy. You want to? Okay, dude, what is this? I don't. I woke up earlier in the morning and I ate like a sandwich and Italian bread, and I watched a Smosh video and then went back to bed. I think that's just the recoil of it. Here's something I'm gonna rant about. It's kind of crazy. You know, I read the initial article, the first article that I was just gonna read, and I'm just gonna read it right here. Maybe I'll put it off to the side over here just so that you know what I'm talking about, because I just want to be like, wow, this is what my current thought process is. So the article is called, it's a CNET article. Oh my gosh, the ads. Generative AI is coming for video games. Here's how it could change gaming. Okay, that's the title. Here's the subtitle. Game developers are enthusiastic, skeptical, cautious, and worried about the new technology's impending impact on the gaming industry. This is an 11-minute read. This was on May 4th, 2024 at 5 a.m. by David Lum, who is a senior reporter covering mobile and gaming spaces. I don't know if he is AI or not. I'm kidding. Here's it. Here's what I read, and then I just like, wait a minute, let me just stand up and talk. There's one topic that stayed on my mind since the Game Developers Conference in March: generative AI. This year, GDC wasn't flooded with announcements that AI is being added to every game, unlike how the technology's been touted in connection with phones and computers. But artificial intelligence definitely made a splash. Enthusiasm for generative AI was uneven. Some developers were excited about its possibilities, while others were concerned over its potential for abuse in an industry with shattered morale about jobs and careers. And then the jobs and careers part and the shattered morale part got me standing up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta talk about something, and here's why. So this is a little bit of tangent, maybe it's a little bit of brain rot, maybe it's just a little bit of like, ooh, wah, wah. But this is how I also just go about when I read articles, and then I read back into the article, and then I'm like, okay, that's kind of good. But I'm gonna keep it like a Spark Note situation because I'm gonna look at the time limit. I also have time. I need to have time to drive to class, and so forth. Also notably, maybe this is just a passion, just me wanting to just talk about something that maybe I explore I don't like or I like, so just keep that in mind. Also in the morning, I'm starting now. I'm also gonna drink water, bro. Look at my throat, bro. I'm not even trying to be raspy right now. It's just that's just how my voice is. If I'm talking too much, it dries. Anyhow, I saw this video. I'm gonna summarize it a little bit. It's worth watching as well if you think I'm being wrong about it a little bit, which could be the case because I'm just trying to remember what I remembered from the video. A lot of the video talked about like how the dying of America is. Essentially like the US dollar, for example, although it is the main type of currency in our decade that's like, not want to say superior, but it sounded superior to me. I'm like, oh, okay, it's still like the top dollar, that it will slowly dwindle as the course goes. Mostly because of how our thought process and from our general, not trauma, but general decline is going to happen. There's this thing called the fourth something. It's not the fourth resurgence. Maybe it is the fourth resurgence, but it's the fourth something where every 20 decades or 20 years, I think it's years, that there's almost this like shift. Maybe it's a declining shift in how people will operate. And essentially, a lot of people can find themselves in fear, especially nowadays, with the incline of just like, not tax dollars, but like just money going up. Not in a good way. It's more so like people are not able to make a living even with the type of money they make because some of it is declining and the cost of most things are rising. I think that's the part of it, especially where we have this type of thing that we've curated called the algorithm, where the algorithm is trying to get ourselves the attention we deserve and also try to create these subsection bubbles that make us concerned, wary, believe that our jobs and careers might be over for the cause of it. Not just the AI aspect of it, but just like the media aspect of it when we're curating specific things and based off being curated by specific things, we build this mindset around ourselves that, oh, this is my world, this is my hell. And essentially, his example was like, how do you combat that? Well, he asked his friends, and he said, oh, do people feel like the world is ending? Like that type of question. And then one of his friends were like, no, the world's not ending. It's just a you thing. It's just your algorithm. So his example of how to combat this thing is that he should just not just worry about himself, but to take action into knowing what he has control over. Maybe it is creating a family, trying to work on their own income, and developing the research mindset of like what is right, what is wrong, that he knows is fundamental to him. So that's cool. It's just a cool listen to. And there's also, he notes like, listen to these things, bop, bop, bop. So that was a summary of that video. Wow, that was kind of good. Of what I took out of it. Now from this article, the belief of like jobs and careers lost. I don't know the analytics, I'm gonna be honest with you, of like how careers over time are like in the game or the film or even outside of that, just a natural job. I just don't look into that. Not because I'm not pushed in the algorithm to force myself to look into that. It's more so just I am not, is this a cover? No. I'm not one to have the instinction to look up articles. I feel like if I took a look at a lot of articles nowadays, I think I would be researching more of the type of media website I'm looking at, right? For the framework, whether if it is like Twitter or X or Instagram or Snapchat, I don't even use Snapchat anymore, or Facebook, you have to know the media landscape you're getting into, which is a very much an interesting thing when you are nowadays getting on social media. It's like, oh, on Twitter and X, do you want to click on rage bait or types of like people cancel culture, or you have like Reddit where a lot of the queries are like, am I the asshole for doing this thing, just to conform to like making sure like, oh, do I have any doubts in my mind, let me just share it to the public in that like social platform. Or you have Instagram, where it's more or less trying to fend off views in a way where it's enticing or explicit to anyone of any age, of any ethnicity, or also the type of culture that you bring in, especially with like TikTok, with just like trying to push yourself out there. Why does that have to be the goal for everyone so that they can feel content? You're like Vsauce here. But these are the things I think about. It's one of those things where you're like, when did that start being a thing? And I'm just thinking about that right now. I'm not even researching that. I'm just like, and these are the moments where you're like, I like to think, but then there's also parts in your time where you're like, a doo-wop, don't think about it every time. Because if you think about it every time, that type of way, then I think you can go put yourself into a spiral in a lot of ways in how you interpret things later on in life. So I think the one thing that I would agree is, not based off the article, just based off like my own self-being and what I've experiencing today, right, is that, for one example, in one of my days, I was feed a lot of like stockbroker guys and like, hey, not like your side hustle should be Bitcoining. And I'm like, because I think because I spent 30 days doing this, like here's how I spent 30 days now doing Bitcoin. It's a baffling thing to even just show, I think like just within my 30 days, the aspects of, hey, this is what I was curious on this day, here was my mindset on this day. It's kind of crazy how, you know, the next day it could have shifted to me being a full-on broke, but I didn't do that because I have my own personal quandaries to worry about. Oh, there was a notification. Or another example, whenever I post a video where I'm just talking in a car, or just talking in general, let's just say, where I'm talking in general, where I'm just reflecting on myself when I get outside of my apartment, right? My apartment generally is just my space where I'm being curated my own stuff or carrying my own thoughts in that way. And that right there is its own natural algorithm, whether I have that idea of self-diagnosing myself as like ADHD, just for example. Just that's an example, like just to attach like a word into another thing. But I'm not saying, or if I am saying, it's an example. If I get distracted, there you go. If I get distracted and then I'm looking at something, I don't even think that's ADHD. I'm just not thinking right now. I'm just throwing things out my mouth. If I'm just looking at things around, like, oh, look at this light. This light's kind of cool. That's an example. I wasn't really aware of looking at the light. I'm more concentrated on talking about what I'm talking about. But that's my curated thing right there. I'm like fixated on it, then fixated on the thing that I worry about. For a real example, working on my personal project more so, because, for example, when I was thinking my parents were going to come over, I was more honed on the idea of cleaning my apartment. But then they never showed up. So I was like, okay, but I got a pro out of it. But ultimately, so it took me away from my work. So how do I think about that? And that's very much a personal dilemma, whether or not it was counterproductive or counterintuitive in that way. But when I'm outside of my apartment and I see other people talk and I just see that as like an actual norm, not as a bad thing, it just like clears my mind to be like, the world is more than just me, right? It's almost that instinction where you are just on this ball of gas in a bigger expanding world. And it's like, although that's overwhelming,
it's kind of endearing in a way where you're just saying to yourself, oh, okay, I'm not as insignificant because I'm here, but I'm not going to do everything in a day, right? I'm not going to work out my whole life's goal in a day because it's ever expanding thing that doesn't stop, even if you continue existing or not, whether you're a lazy bum or not. It's going to progress whether you like it or not. And I think with like people, when they find themselves trying to have control or to represent the bigger impacts of the world, how does one do it carefully or try to not mess it up? Because ultimately there's going to be a lot of things that mess up. I think the biggest takeaway when it comes to just working on projects with people is to understand that even the best people in the world can mess up sometimes in just simple communication. And if you think of just like movies right now or films right now in the top of your head, or just the type of media that you enjoy, there could be some hidden backlash behind the stuff. There's an article on the chart thing, I'll also put it here, where it goes to a website for like the game industry like website, and it talks about like Charlie Kirk, like, oh, there's this one company that fired this person because they were eliciting like bad intent, or a bad voice, or a bad intentions, or explicitly said something out of line about Charlie Kirk, a person who was popular in this type of way. And I didn't know him or follow him, but there's that branching thing where it's like from other people's sub algorithms, it sort of balls onto itself like Agario. Like Agario, what? Agario is a game like this. That's so much information. Dumb. Where you're this little, not mitosis creature, but you're this little blob and you get to spit out things, information, and then you can absorb other people, and over time you gain a bigger mass. But sometimes you have a spike, and there's spikes around, or there's maybe like other competing blobs around. But when you hit a spike, you split, and some of that majority of that audience or that bubble disperses, and it's still a part of you, but it's moving around, but it could be taken over by other bigger entities and be absorbed. And maybe if you're unlucky, you get fully absorbed by the bigger one, the bigger corporation, if you will, or you don't, and you take over any opportunity that gets you from the frame of reference that you only have from view. And notably, your view gets bigger and bigger as you grow. And the significance of the smaller people are the only intentions is not is this, that you need to consume them more in order to get bigger, to be at the top of the ladder. Thank you so much for listening to my Agario essay on why Agario is the framework of political media today. It reminds me of, this is my last anecdote, it reminds me of this video here. I watched it yesterday when I was waiting for my haircut, and it was about art. And it started off with Andre 3000. and his music album, which I don't even follow either. It's just like, okay, now that's in my zeitgeist of like knowing that. But then it segues into the game and how art is a fail. I forgot what the title is because I need to look it up. But like how art is hard, I think. It'll be here. And I'm like, that transition was weird. When I was listening to it, I'm like, okay. But yeah, those are my thoughts now. If I had to go more into it, I think I just find it fascinating that in the video about the impending doom of the US falling down, it's that it's a bad thing if the future generation self-doubts themselves, if there's not any motivation, if there's not any rise in double thinking, avoiding double thinking. In that, if we just self-diagnose the older generation or the current state of our generation now and not focus on progressing it, then we'll find ourselves fumbling and becoming stagnant for whatever reason that we decide to be like. You know, that arguments don't go anywhere unless there is some progression. And whether progression is good or not, we have to learn from that immediately and see through it whether or not it's the right course of action to continue or not. And I think it's also an interesting thing when it comes to just the availability of trends nowadays, just algorithmically wise. If I had to talk about like character AI again, it's like if I can almost anticipate what types of fandoms are going to pop off, or might not anticipate fandoms that pop off, or types of Google search terms that might pop off. And I have to fight that in order to get attention for whatever I am trying to convey towards the public. Kind of weird. I don't know. But that's like the mindset that I hate, but it seems to me the current thing to understand during this decade, which is having to balance yourself from the media that you're curated and also your own thoughts and intentions and how your well-being can impact you long term. And I feel like back then, before media, it was more so how can you survive on the cost of things, as well as trying to see a face value for what the future might hold in the expeditions of media. And going about your life. I don't think there was much of a connection. This is just like a rant to me. There wasn't much of the feeling of a connection between trying to get yourself out there. Then I think there's more people who want to put themselves out there, obviously probably because of the population base, versus people who back then just wanted like a job. And I think now the job market feels like there's not enough jobs based on the video of things, or there was unconsciously amount of lesser jobs than anticipated, and as well as the need for individuals in those jobs changing, whether you are a senior at a certain company or whether they're not hiring for a specific role. I personally believe it's not as much the end of the world when it comes to not having a job. There are many people who don't have jobs. You can look them up or go outside into like a city to just see that. And I think that's the fascinating thing about life, whether or not you seek it out. It's almost that humans can find themselves adapting to things, but it's truly how you go about the thing that will change you the next day or the day after that. And whether you keep that mindset of trying to struggle on the idea of finding yourself in your own self challenges to overcome, to not think about it, but work on it. That's my TED Talk. Boo, that sucked. I know, it sucked. I'm gonna skim. What time is it? Let me just check the time here. I can't check the timer here. I can't slide. See, this is why I'm like, I need my iPad or something. Hey Google, what time is it? It's 9:56 a.m. I talked for 21 minutes, which is good. I also want to see if I said or like, because I'm also practicing. As the same thing goes, as much as I'm riffing, I'm practicing for my portfolio for Noam Kesar, which is our person for technical art, and also trying to talk about Boyd's, materials, SDFs, collisions, mimicking terrainal weather patterns, etc. That's just me. I like to rant. Thank you for enjoying it in the background. Okay. We gonna edit video. Okay. I'm gonna just be honest. I think it was great today. Discussion for Gen AI. I think what she was talking about with Gen AI is LLMs, not the type of AI like Grammarly, but now new Grammarly has AI like prompting or something, or like music, right? They have like music like prompting stuff. But anyhow, she's talking about sort of the generative AI where you generate images that aren't your own, or using it like Copilot in order in your everyday life to curate things to you, I think. Otherwise, a lot of the combos, my big top things that I didn't really, I raised my hand and asked and answered, and she's like, damn, you give me 3 things to talk about. It's like, okay. Which was the cost of it, the memory of it, and the energy behind it. And then other people added their own things like IPs, if it's intruding on one's creativity, which is a big thing, and the type of education you get from getting from it at a younger age or an older age. And there was something that she said, I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting, where in her experience, back in her day, she was in a log cabin with like a bunch of friends, and the internet wasn't as big of a thing. It was a lot of doing your own research, gathering your own intel from books, and I'm gonna wave at Paul. Paul didn't look at me, he was looking at the ground while walking. Anyhow, they were just around talking, conversing for like an hour or 5 hours, and then someone mentions in their friend room, like, do you know about this thing, this and that thing, like, oh, the Roman Empire, for example. Do you remember the Roman Empire? It was a guy. What's your Roman Empire? And he would get from the log cabin, I think it was probably his log cabin, because she didn't really specify whose log cabin it was, but he gets a big encyclopedia book about like the Roman Empire and sifts through it, and that takes like most of the hour to just prove that, like, it's like, oh, here's like the Roman Empire, like here's Caesar. Is that Caesar part of the Roman Empire? I don't know. We'll look into more. With that being said, there's that distinction of how we just get information. The feeling of, oh, I don't really have to think about what I'm trying to make. I initially just make what I make.
Another example is when she was talking about her own kid who was starting to be a DM, a dungeon master for a D&D campaign. He would look up on ChatGPT a form of character sheet. Like, can you make me a character sheet? Not like a generative image, but talking about like, oh, can I get some traits? Can I get what they might be carrying? Oh, what's the type of race are they? Give me some names. Give me examples of the types of world building aspects that I apply, probably for the character, and so like their motivations. And she was like, wait. This also plays an idea of like, is generative AI ethically like a good thing for play or profit more so for companies, but play for like those types of things where they're not really gonna sell it to Wizard of the Coast, this new character concept idea. And now her kid writes in notebooks just to express their thoughts and gather their own information references as they go along. I might get a drink. I want a drink. Otherwise, I felt like I should have recorded what she said, but that's kind of intrusive as well. So I'm like, overall, I think me just explaining it is fine. Then afterwards, when I left, I talked to Isaiah and Hunter at the Noom Team space. And I promptly just discussed, hey, what do we think about seating arrangements? And Isaiah's like, oh, maybe it's like freeform, but I also understand if it's going to be the way where the types of degree programs aren't really going to talk to each other. Like, you don't want a whole lot of like CS people in one row and art people on another. You want that mixed mash of things, especially when I'm like, I read an article. Whoa! Okay, no. See, this is so looped in. You know, I feel like every time I'm in that class, I'm like, girl, you're already saying things I already know, which is fine, but it's like one of those things where I'm now applying it to like what I am saying in this video, is the idea of diversity in the workplace. Wow, it was underneath the article that I was talking about in the same box category. So in this article, I forgot the name of the article, it's a long one, but I think it's from The Guardian, and it is 4 years ago that article was made. It was during the time when the surgence of Ubisoft doing something, and also I saw AI Dungeon mentioned and how the parameters are going to be like. In the first article, it talks about Hidden Door, which was another one of those things when I was doing my research when I was on the game Barton that I was like, oh, okay, that's very interesting to talk about. But I digress. So in the second half, it talks about this diversity in the workplace, not only just in prompting with the talks of AI, where a lot of it has a 10 to 13% of women were talking in Google, talking about like LLM, just for example, LLMs, or just AI in general. And most of the majority, like 30 to 40% of it was more so men who were talking. Also as well, the types of like job markets in just like degree programs and how they talk about things. I think I'm just adding on to that. Anyhow, I think it was from that article or the first article that there was mention of the general place of being able to have different opinions is a valuable thing, not just in the type of department you are, but also just from experiences, for example, your race, your ethnicity, because having a well-rounded game is better than having a singular game overall. And I think when you have that leeway when it comes to ChatGPT, for example, when you craft a world, right? And I use that example, I'm gonna keep that video in. I use that example of like character AI, that ability to just make a character specifically based off their personality, their appearance, their goals, their drives for a fandom. That's the main purpose of character AI, honestly. And then second would be world. Crafting a bigger world, how do you contain that until it becomes just a blur? I also want to note, top of the bat, I didn't note it in my character AI, but now I know it later on, because it's always that thing when I turn off the recording and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have said that as well, is the aspect of hallucinations. Hallucinations in AI are like a common thing. It's also common in our game Barton, where Barton would have the ability to just be like, oh, step on the pressure plate, and he's nowhere near the pressure plate. So it's like, oh. So that's what you have to know as well when it comes to AI, is that you can write out a lot of things. You can give it all the detail you want, but it will make up stuff still as a result of just developing the world, whether if it's something that you've never thought about, which is okay, bad. You think I was gonna just say okay? No, it's terrible if you are going to be someone who wants to either like vibe code, if you will, on certain types of games or just in media in general. But for the most part, even when I make like a full-fledged character, right, the type of memory that they're stored in them is not gonna last, and you always have to really make them reroute back to the idea of what they're saying, especially when it comes to multiple characters in one type of character that you make, source that you make it in. So you can have like a group of friends. That's the character AI thing that you're making. And then you want to name like more than 2 people, and you have to create 2 more people with personalities. And then when you test that, it sort of just adds probably another person, or they mix up the people with the name. So it's like, how do you contain that? And especially with like a world, like how do you keep referencing that? Well, to me, how I solve that issue is a kind of interesting thing. So this is just a little side tangent. After this, I'm gonna get my drink and then I'm gonna work on editing stuff. So first you have this format of a character. Let's say it's a singular character. Bob. Bob is the name. There is a tag thing that you can, no, it's not tag. It's like a, not a definition, but it's like a subtext that you can say like, okay, what is Bob? Like Bob is an original character. Bob is from this world, or just like, help me please, I need a better character. Please try to practice using it. And then you have your description or your summary of Bob to be like under 500 characters, be like, Bob is this. And I, from my experience, out of 100% of trying to like get this Bob character be Bob character, it usually takes away from that at least like 20% of the time. And then you have your greetings, which make up how Bob interacts with you, the person writing to them. And the best part about that greetings now is the dynamic of like the AI prompt, where you can have multiple things that you yourself can write about how Bob interacts, and then you can click the check mark of the AI prompt thing, not AI prompt thing, but like AI randomizer thing, and it sifts through, this is from what I think it does, it sifts through the amount, let's say like you put like 50 types of greetings for it. You can't prompt it to make 50 types of greetings. You have to write out 50 types of greetings. I don't think there's a limit. Maybe there's a limit. I've never reached the limit because I've never really tried to go above like 3 or 5, that's all you really need to make like a consistent, like dynamic, like quote unquote real character to feel. But from that, I would say the greeting takes 45% of what you do. So you have 65, and then the rest of it is 35, if I'm doing my math correctly. 35% goes into the definition. What's the definition? The definition is like their backstory, their appearance, the world they're probably in, the types of relationships that they might have, what they might be usually carrying, if they have any special skills or abilities, what they like or dislike. There's so many things that I'm like, whoa, that's interesting. And I find that part interesting, because if we go back all the way just to me, is that like just making characters and understanding like the types of worlds that you make, whether it's kind of like a webcomic or if you're like a concept artist, if you just really want to like flesh out like what type of character, how their mannerisms are like, and you don't want it to read as though it's like you saying those things or like acting out those things, then having something external say it to you, although that's up to you then whether you believe that's how the person should act in a way. But also just like it's another jumping point for you to be like, okay, this is a good idea, let me write it down. And all else is to say, when you just make that character, that's how much information gets put into when you write to that character. And speaking of that, sorry, loser, I'm kidding. I'm saying loser to myself. Is the aspect of how much time a user would write out something. I think for me, just like using it in my personal life is sort of more so like a news outlet for me to be like, what are people into, like fandoms, or it's like a more tamed Reddit but regular in a way where it's like, I wish they added this, I wish they added this, I wish they added this, you know. There's also a subscription thing. I personally don't need the subscription. I would honestly say if it stopped being free, because it's free, I would stop using it. Honestly, God. I would not pay for it because it seems like when you do pay for it, it's just secrets. Ooh, see, this is when you have to know things. When you pay for it, it seems like you can't cancel your subscription from it, from what a lot of people do. So it's like, ooh, from what I've read, maybe you can. That's great. But I'm never gonna really pay for it because already it seems like even with the free, you get to also see the insights of like what things are. So the cool things about it that I find innovating, but also, you know, behind it, it's like the cost, the energy, and the cost, energy, memory, is the fact of them having like a podcast system of like people using voices, and you can craft those different types of template settings and worlds that you can put your characters in. Yeah, just having videos, talking generated videos, or just like images that you have on your existing character that you decide to display is a thing. What's another thing? Tags are terrible though still. I wish they would add like a folder system or like a personal folder system where you can decide where to put these things and curate it. Oh, also they have like a feed section where you can share your favorite ones, which is like, I don't use that. But I think what also strongly is good about character AI overall as just like formatting things is like they don't have like comment sections. It's all like reaction, like emojis, which to me at least is like good in a way, because it's almost, but also bad in a way where it's like, oh, okay, people like it. There's not really like any like arguments unless it's showed an emoji. It's like no, we hate that. It's not as like forum based. It's more so curating based, which is an interesting thing. But no, it has like almost everything in it. The search function is kind of weird, but it also has a like what is hot at the moment, like types of fandom, types of keywords, and then when you click on those, you're like, what the heck? You're like, what is this muck? What is this terrible thing? And then I look on Google, I'm like, oh, okay, there's weird relevancy behind these things. It's very current. That's why I'm like, interesting. Even if it's like a small fandom, it's like, oh, this new episode came out like 2 days ago, or a day ago, or even 5 hours ago, and it's popping off. It's almost like Twitter, and like, I've never used Twitter, but it's like, yeah. To end it all off, because it's getting hot in here, is that when I was thinking about those three things, cost, memory, and energy, I was thinking about this one show called Pantheon. I would recommend watching Pantheon, and it's a really good thing. I watched it like when I was at my parents' place. It was on Netflix. I think it's from, at the time right now, I feel like it's from AMC. I could be wrong. But the main point in that is there is artificial intelligence, and then there is, I forgot the other term. It's not cognitive intelligence. I'll put it above my head. But mainly is that you put the human conscious inside the digital world. Sort of not like isekaiing yourself into the world, but having a duplicate or replica scan of your brain into the cyberverse. And that still has that similar framework to like LLMs, like large language models, where you need to have it in an environment that is cold, or you need to have like big types of like energy corporations to like make sure it's being regulated correctly. And the ethics behind like not just on a multiverse learning language model scale, but on the mindset of like how fast processing works over time when you evolve from your being of like learning language models to even the cost of one's privacy or information. It's really good. I think it came out like in 2018 or something, or 2016. It was around that time. But it's good. And also cloning. It's great. Okay, now I'm gonna crank out work. I feel like there should be like weight to a coat, where when you're walking and there's like a brisk, and I'm like holding like my green tea ginseng, and I'm like feeling my coat like grabbing in the back, and I want to feel like I'm aura farming IRL. That's not feel like aura farming IRL. No, I feel, because I saw people in suits, and their suits are like the black suits, and they're just like not even buttoned, but they're just down while they walk. It's like, wow, that's cool. Like, I'm looking at a person right now with like their jacket, and it's like moving about. I'm like, bro, you're losing aura. You're losing aura as you go. I want like a weight pin or something, you know, like weights on like the ends of like your jackets or something, and then you're like, wow, that's great. Or maybe it's like a buoyancy concern if you're like out at sea and then it becomes that, but that's kind of weird to think about. Or maybe it's like a metal detecting thing where it's like, oh, we're detecting metal in your coat. I'm like, that makes sense as well. To add more fabric, maybe the fabric can be more insulated then you don't want to be too warm. I don't know. That's just me. Beep.
This is really happening, and you notice something is happening as well. And I know all of this sounds really dark, and it kind of is dark. But history shows that societies do go through these new cycles every 20 years. And every time it feels like the world is going to end. But life goes on. Now, I've been seeing the news a lot lately, and the question I had for myself is, how do I stay sane? And one thing that recently helped me is I went to dinner with my friends and I asked them, do you guys feel like the world is about to come to an end, or is it just me? And they were like, nah, it's just you. That's just your algorithm. It's your bubble. I don't feel that. And I hope they're right. But if this is really happening and you notice something is happening as well, for me, the answer is I'm going to go back to the basics. I'm going to build real things, own real assets, build a family and a community, and focus on what I can actually control, which is doing what I love, staying informed, and understanding why this is happening so I don't become bitter. And also things like taking care of myself, going to the gym, eating well, and trying to stay off of social media, which is really hard to do because this is what I do.
Mr. Wonderful here. My friend Howard Marks is the co-founder of Activision, the gaming giant that was just acquired for an impressive $68.7 billion. Now Howard and I have teamed up on his latest company, Start Engine, which is changing the face of finance as we know it. Start Engine just opened its latest funding round to the public, and now you can invest alongside me.
But I don't think it's productive to feel what Charlie Kirk described as economic nihilism. It's this feeling of, why try if nothing matters? That's dangerous because once a generation stops believing in the possibility of a better future, they start looking for ways to tear the system down and then laugh about it. And that's sad. But it's also true that people who own homes, who have families, who have a stake in society, don't burn it down. They protect it. And that's something I can work toward. Because the truth is, you and I can't control the Fed, we can't control Congress, we can't control the media, but what we can control are our own decisions. That means things like being careful with debt, investing for the long term, and then not letting the algorithms turn us into angry, bitter people that lack empathy, that can't have a conversation with someone who disagrees with us. So if you look at this from the lens of these cycles, maybe we are in some fourth turning moment, but I also like to think that on the other side of that is a first turning, a renewal, rebuilding, optimism. So if you feel like the world is falling apart, just remember, it always has been. But it's the people who stay informed, who stay focused on what matters. I think those are the people that come out stronger. But that's why I always say, if you want to understand the world, look at it through the lens of incentives and economics. Now, all of this was a very dumbed down version of some really complex ideas and concepts that are happening around the world. And I'm only looking at it through a very limited scope of money and psychology, because that's what I love. I love investing and I love magic, but there's more to this story. If you want to get a lot more detailed, I'd recommend a video called The Collapse of the West with Balaji and Peter McCormick. It's an incredible video and it goes into a lot more detail about what's happening. You can also read The Fourth Turning, and you might want to check out Ray Dalio's book as well. In the meantime, sorry for the depressingly sad and boring video, but I hope you got something good out of it, and I hope it's just me. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love to see you back here next week. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
One of my favorite parts of building the new home was picking all the selections. And that whole process was really interesting because you're designing your own home.
The way I describe my house is it's like a fairy tale house for us. It's everything we wanted from the beginning to the end.
Think of all the places that could expose you to identity theft. If something happens, LifeLock provides a dedicated US-based restoration specialist with expertise to make the right calls and take the right steps to fix your case start to finish.